I'm Nick Roush, he's Adam Luckett, and this is 11 Personnel presented by our good friends at Monticello Bank. Been in business since the 1800s, that's right, a couple centuries ago. They've stayed in business because they're putting people first. It's where people matter at Monticello Bank, where they'll get the best rates, whether you're looking for a new car or home or just need a little personal banking. Hell, they do it all at Monticello Bank. Convenient locations all across Kentucky. You can find out where the nearest one is to you by visiting them online at nbcbank.com. You can also check out their mobile app, little mobile banking wherever you need to go with the Go NBC mobile app. Monticello Bank, proud presenting sponsors of 11 Personnel. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Look at a little history's been made here. 100 days until the start of the Kentucky football season, and it's in the courtroom. It's our favorite things to discuss. A little college football courtroom conversations. You got to have a JD to cover this sport nowadays. It's exhausting, but we are one step closer to reaching the final destination of pay to play, which is revenue sharing in college football.
Yeah, and I just tonight on KSR, Nick, I wrote up pretty much like the simplest breakdown of this possible. So I would advise to go and check that out if you're curious, if you have questions. If you're more interested, I would say go to On3, check out our NIL page, our sports business page. They're kind of breaking it down, and getting attorney quotes and breaking it down really well. But long story short, what's happening here is NCAA owed players money, right? They owed back pay. They got sued for it, for them not being able to capitalize on NIL. There was a lawsuit filed in 2020 by a former Arizona State swimmer, I believe. And so now you're getting 4 years later, there's a lot more antitrust lawsuits coming against them. Mm-hmm. And they just had to settle. Now, what does this mean? That this means that the settlement, it's going to be $2 billion split up between conferences. Power 5 conferences are paying out 40%. Everyone else, the rest of the conferences are paying out 60%, and the NCAA is paying out a certain amount too. And basically, what this means is there's going to be revenue.
Well, that part of it too. The Big East tried to fight it, but it was an uphill battle.
Yes.
I can't believe they snuck that one. Yes. I would get pissy about it too. Like, Power 4 or 5 conferences, you're the reason we're in this mess. You all pay the damn money,
Hot dog man, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know why. I don't know how they kicked the can to the non-revenue guys and are getting away with this, especially when they're going to be making more in the future anyway. Because the little man, he's going to be the one that's most likely to get squeezed out of this all. But,
yeah, I think
the big guys run the show.
Great points there. Yeah, so anyway, and they were the ones really pushing this through. And there was a push, I think, by these other conferences to say, hold on now, let's flip that. Power 5 pays 60%, we pay 40%, but it got accepted on Wednesday before they could really make that push by the NCAA Board of Governors. And long story short, there's going to be revenue sharing in college athletics. Basically, each school is going to have a pot of money that they can throw money into, and there's going to be a cap on it. It sounds like the cap's going to be like around $22 million, but most of them are going to have right around $20 million. And that is your money to disperse to student athletes on your sports teams. And how do you disperse that? That's really all we know. How do you disperse it? You don't know. Title IX is still a thing that they're going to have to figure out.
Yeah.
So there's probably some.
Matt had a good point in that, because I wondered the same thing. I was clueless, but essentially Title IX, it's all about opportunity and not exactly same exact resources. It's just the opportunity to make money. So they'll get some, but it'll, football team's going to get a ton of that, right? Like
yeah. But it's also like, I don't think collectives are going away. All indications are collectives are still going to be there. So a Reed Shepherd, if he comes back, he gets a part of that $22 million pie. Whatever it is, but he can still go out there and do commercials for Donato's or do commercials for Paul Miller Ford or the real, almost like real NIL. Like, that is still going to be out there, and that, like, generating money is still going to be a thing. But you have the actual.
It'll be more real nil.
Yes, but the actual university is going to be paying them now,
and not just like, hey fans, you all need to pay for our players.
and not the 1%ers
Yeah.
in your booster group.
And I think I forgot when we were talking about this, but I thought you made the good point. Part of the reason the schools were pushing this is they didn't want the booster group to have as much power as they were gaining because they were bankrolling their roster operations. Right? If you're the one signing the checks to get the players on campus, you're going to be wheeling and dealing a lot more power than a lot of those administrators would like.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just 100%, and you can just talk about funds now. How are they going to wrap up this revenue sharing? Like, does each person get a same amount? I don't know how that works. I mean, that's something they're going to have to figure out. Another thing with this is, Nick, they might get rid of scholarship limits. So, like, you could have 100 players on a football team, and there wouldn't be walk-ons. They would all be on scholarship. The baseball team, instead of 11.6 or whatever the number is, 10.7, someone in the chat could tell me, they might just give them whatever 30 scholarships on a baseball team. You might be able to do that. But yeah, you're right. The football team is probably going to get most of it here at most places, and it's a good step in the right direction. But now it's going to be kind of on the Power 5 to kind of police themselves there, and it's a way I think to keep everyone under the same umbrella for the time being. But things are going to look a lot different. And what are the unintended consequences? I don't think we really know yet.
So many. It's going to be hilarious.
But I think the big things here are the schools can pay the players now. Like, that is a big deal. Like, that needed to happen. Like, it just had to happen.
I forgot who pointed it out that the NCAA fought tooth and nail over like $6,000 in benefits just 7 years ago. And now here they are voting to pay $2.2 billion in back revenue plus create a salary cap for each individual school. Like, how quickly things changed, and they had to, because I mean the NCAA was running they were fleecing everybody. They were running a monopoly, violating antitrust laws for 100+ years, but the status quo was kind of maintained, and it didn't really get challenged until they kind of cracked the door open with nil. And the funny part to me, like it, is they thought that nil was going to be this little carrot that you could dangle it out there for them, right? Like, well, this will appease them for a while, when they didn't realize that they legally just opened the door for the Avalanche to fall. So I'm amused by it. Mark Emmert's one of the worst leaders in the history of any American organization ever. He's so terrible at his job, so stuck in his ways, and so unwilling to have any sort of foresight. They could have gotten ahead of this instead of had their hand forced, but he was such a garbage piece of you-know-what at his job that now they're having to pay for it. And it's a shame that he doesn't have to personally pay for it, because he made a ton of money working for the NCAA.
Yeah. And it puts more value. There was already a ton of value. It puts more value on being in the two big dog conferences, Big Ten and SEC.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're already, like, they're making money. They can figure out that fairly easy. If you're in the Big 12 or you're in the ACC, like, it's a little more tricky kind of figuring that out. I mean, it's something they should be able to do, but it's not, I would say, a slam dunk. So that makes it tricky. And then there were some reports earlier this week. I believe Ross Dellinger wrote this. It's regard to Florida State, the Drew Weatherford, like, private equity getting involved. Now, I don't know a lot about that stuff. You read, and the way you read it is like it's a terrible thing. I don't know a lot about that, but that's definitely something
you're taking out loans. I mean, that's they're just taking out loans, and I don't know about you, but any sort of guy who, I think he went 4 for 15 and threw 2 interceptions and a loss to Wake Forest once upon a time. Anytime that guy's trying to loan you a bunch of money, feels a little like, this loan shark guy, you know, I don't know about all this, but it don't sound good.
Yeah, but So everybody needs loans in life, Nick. Like you can't live in America without having a loan or two. So
I prefer getting mine from Monticello Bank than through
yes,
Rutherford.
yes, but that's out there now. Like
Yeah.
that is something I think these ACC, these Big 12, maybe even these American Athletic Conference teams are going to look at. Because everyone's trying to keep up, and like the SEC Big Ten is going to be fine, but it's going to create a bigger distance between them. And athletic teams are going to get cut at these sports. Like I think that most SEC Big teams will be fine, but like if you're a middle tier school in the ACC or Big 12, you're probably going to have to cut a sport that's been around a long time eventually. Like that to me is probably going to be one of the unintended consequences of this.
If I had to guess, one at Kentucky, no offense, men's soccer, but that's a lot of people for a team. They don't compete in the Southeastern Conference. There is no SEC soccer. That feels like an easy first one to go. Even though they've been good, like it just that feels like one that would go by the wayside. You got all the swimming and diving controversy right now. Like how much, so that because you're still going to have the Title IX stuff. So it's like trying to find that balance. But you're exactly right. Like the Olympic sports are definitely in danger here. There's the ones that though like that are going to be, I think, fine and might actually thrive in this. It's like wrestling and volleyball in the Big Ten, gymnastics in the SEC. These conferences where it's like that's kind of their thing. Like I think those will be fine, but you worry about the kind of tertiary ones from there.
Yes. The random golf program gets eliminated.
Yeah. Which, club golf, sign me up. Just got to do some fundraising, go play some courses. You hit the links any at all yet this year, like it? Did the PGA Championship inspire you?
I have not, other than when I was down in Florida on that little trip we just went on not too long ago.
What'd I tell you about Xander, though? I did not predict the Scotty Scheffler arrest, but X finally gave it to us, man. He finally gave it to us.
He did. I thought even at that 18, I did not think that putt was going in.
Dude,
I thought for sure we were going to a playoff.
I had the same thought too, and that was as close as you could get to missing it while still making it. I mean, that thing was just, I don't know. I still don't know how it went in. But that was one hell of a finish. So shout out Xander. Shout out. We got derailed briefly there. Sorry. But are there any more house points you'd like to make before we get into some more like actual like football-y stuff? Because I admittedly like it. Like the Ross Dellinger beat exhausts me. Like, I don't know how that guy does it. Like, it's just like, he's covering football, but it's not like the actual football. When he goes to games, he just gets
He's a business reporter in the college football sphere. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really kind of wraps it. I think the big thing here is that this is a huge step, but there's still like all these secondary things that have to get done.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing to know is 2025, there's probably going to be there's probably going to be a pot of money. And, insert Brock Vandagriff is going to get some of that money for Kentucky next year.
And this is a decent segue, but you also think about it, well, how does this factor into recruiting? Because we've got a big dime decision coming up on Saturday. Martels Carter Jr., the top-ranked player in the state of Kentucky, according to the On3 industry ranking. He's a top 200 safety who attends Paducah Tillman, originally from Chattanooga. It's one of those like it that we felt good enough to put in RPMs back in February. Things cooled. Auburn made some moves on him, but he's going forth and announcing a decision this weekend. And I'm curious how Kentucky's kind of gotten ahead of the path here. If they end up locking up Carter, he'll be the third 4-star prospect in the class, joining Quentin Simmons and Marquise Davis, the running back from Cleveland. But Kentucky's they're pretty far ahead right now with the status quo now, but like I'm sure they wouldn't know anything by this signing day, but how the salary cap, a hard concrete salary cap from the school, factors into recruiting, that's another unintended consequence from all of this that we don't know about. I got no clue. Like, because that there might be, it's almost as though that they're growing their money pots where they have a base, and now you're probably going to be able to sprinkle in the nil stuff here and there, or maybe you just use the nil stuff for high school recruiting and you rely on the revenue sharing for just the transfer portal. That's going to be fascinating once it gets implemented. Although I don't think it will directly impact 2025 guys like Martels Carter. Even though they'll probably get paid, they'll probably end up getting that pot of money by the time their freshman year rolls around.
No, I don't. It's hard. It's hard to see that, but it's just hard to say in general. It's just hard to even predict that. I think there's definitely going to be as long as the collectives can still operate like they're operating, and if the NCAA doesn't have any teeth in the matter, which again I'm no law dog, but I have a hard time seeing how they could have any teeth in the matter unless these guys become legitimate employees. Mm-hmm. And there's a CBA, and they unless that happens, because then you can negotiate both parties, the players and the colleges can negotiate what's legal and what isn't and agree to it. But until that happens, it's hard for me to see collectives going away. And so as long as they're out there, especially in this conference, schools are going to take advantage. So that's going to be something you're going to have to be willing to an arena you're going to have to be willing to play ball in to some extent. And so that's still going to matter. Now, with Carter, I think Kentucky's made him a very high priority, but I think Auburn has too. Auburn made a big push. I like where Kentucky stands, but I've said this for a while now. No matter what happens on May 25th, it's going to be a 7-month dogfight of recruitment until December. This was around the time Keontae Goodwin committed, right, Nick? It was April, May-ish.
Justin Rogers did in May. I don't think Keontae. Well, yeah, no, you're right.
Committed
yeah,
in the spring.
It was May-ish. It's just that was a whole different circus. But yes, this is right around the timing of the commit early and kind of
not to compare it to that recruitment, but I'm going to compare it to that recruitment. Keontae went and took all his visits. I think we're going to see that with Martels Carter. Auburn has that big cat weekend in July. It's this huge unofficial visit. It's the last chance to get players on campus before everyone's season starts.
Yeah.
They have one. Texas A&M has one. LSU has one. A bunch of schools have
barbecue. 502 barbecue. Yeah. There's a lot of
Clemson has a barbecue. A lot of schools have these now, and I think he is locked in to that, or there's been speculation that he is locked in to attend Auburn's Big Cat weekend. So then I think he's going to see Auburn in the fall. I think he's going to see Kentucky in the fall. I think there's probably going to be possibly a Colorado visit. Oregon's been involved, Tennessee's been involved. All those schools could get him on campus for official visit in the fall. So I think this is going to be a recruitment that some people, what does committed mean or anything? I think that's going to be a phrase thrown around this recruitment, but I think Kentucky's in the lead, and that's a good place to be right now with 7 months left. And I think it's going to be somewhat difficult to overtake them, especially if they have a good year. So I think it's good to get out in front of this right now to get Carter in the fold. Yeah. But this recruitment is not anywhere close to over, in my opinion.
And a part of the reason why his dad played a big role in MPA, which is a big 7-on-7 weightlifting. It's one of those programs. Cutter Bowley played for him. It's a huge deal. So you're dealing with that sort of stuff, right? Like that, and that just comes with it. Vince does a great job with all of those and sort of recruitments, and I expect the same here. So hopefully there will be some celebrating on Saturday. Memorial Day weekend. It's typically 4th of July is the big holiday weekend where we've got commitments. Right. Hopefully the Cats get Martels Carter Jr. in the fold and get the ball rolling. I don't know if we had it in our itinerary or not, but our good pal Shaka Cummings brought up another big story from this week that this is another one where I'm not Mr. Law Dog again, but I certainly know that Jaden Rashada does have some standing to be able to sue Billy Napier and the boosters from that blown nil collective deal. Now, I haven't seen the contract like it, but it sounds like a contract was breached. How many witnesses, what was signed, all that sort of stuff. That's where you're going to get into the minutia of things and how much he can actually hold their feet to the fire. But particularly, Shaka wanted to ask like it is, can Florida use this to try to fire Napier with cause? Because, I don't know, by the time way the schedule's shaping up, Kentucky might be playing an interim coach when they go down to the Swamp.
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing in this is that it's not illegal now to do what he did. Technically, I guess. Like, you can pay the player.
Tennessee basically sued their way or threatened to sue their way out of getting any punishment for nil stuff.
Right. And because of that, there's kind of a loophole, I would say. So he's probably got wiggle room out of that. That was my first takeaway when that story broke, but I don't know if they could get there. If it was bad enough, maybe they do use that to potentially at least lower the buyout.
Yeah.
But if this happens 3 years ago, I mean, if this is 2021, I'm sure they try to fire him pretty fast based on how everything is going. But I don't know if that can happen. I'm a little bit more, I guess, skeptical or doubt that could happen because of that. And for him, it's almost, to me, Nick, it kind of reads and smells like, hey, you told me I was going to get paid $13.5 million. You told me when I signed I was going to get paid $1 million. I got nothing. I went to Arizona State and got not much. Like, I just want some money out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you told me we had an agreement. I need to get some money from this. So that one's going to be, I guess, a settlement. They're going to go to court and end up settling. And then all the while, which makes it the most college football thing ever, is that he's on Georgia's roster.
Oh,
he went to the Dawn, right? He goes to Kirby Smart, asks for his blessing, gets his blessing, and then files
kiss the ring.
Like, you can't draw it up any better than that.
I would just prefer that the headline was backup Georgia quarterback sues Florida head coach. That's hilarious. And it would be even funnier though if Florida actually was in the same stratosphere as Georgia. We go through this in the Governor's Cup. Doesn't it feel like the cocktail party is just always just a huge swinging pendulum? There's like a year where, I think they might be able to get him, and then nope, it's just one team dominates completely, and then it goes the other side, and the other team dominates completely.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say for that rivalry is that it was Florida my whole life, really. It kind of just dominated, and Georgia poked up every once and again. But it almost feels like that series is going like how Alabama and Tennessee went. Like, it feels like Georgia could just reel off all of these in a
20
row.
straight in a row, yeah. The one that
or 16 out of 17 or 15 out of 18, something like that.
The one I did remember that I think Georgia even lost the game when they celebrated in the end zone after the first touchdown. That was a very Mark Richt-like moment, but it was
awesome.
2007.
Yes, that's my freshman year of college.
That was great.
We're watching that game. Yeah, and then Florida came back the next year, and Georgia pretty much had their whole team back. They had a typical Mark Richt underachieving year, and Florida absolutely beat the brakes off of them in 2008.
Mark Richt underachieving? No way. No way. Which, while we're on the SEC, we've got some early SEC power rankings. Jesse Simonton put some up this week for On3. I think even when I wrote about the power rankings in First Down Kentucky, I talked about how tiering the conference is the better way to do it because you're grouping a lot of teams in a bunch that are going to have the same records, basically. So trying to actually go 1 through 16 feels silly. Tiers are my preferred way to go about it. You went through your tiers, and I loved it. It got me in the mindset of trying to put my feet in the shoes of the other SEC teams. You know, it's a little early to be doing SEC Media Days research like it, but we're getting close.
It's never too early.
It's
never too early.
Yeah, Luckett was texting me about travel arrangements for 2 months from now. So like that's how he's locked in. He's ready to go. I'm meanwhile just baking Eli Drinkowitz takes because that's where my calendar is. And I appreciate that while you were going through the tiers though, you came up with your own. So we've come up with some SEC underachievers, and I'm happy to share them now to get ahead of the curve because look at these losers need to know they're going to be losers before they are in fact losers.
Couldn't said it any better myself.
Yeah, and Missouri fans, they found out pretty quickly. No, they found out about a day later that they are going to underachieve, and it's one of those things they're having a hard time accepting the fact because they did come off a great year, and you know what? Hats off to them, man. They were awesome last year. They were surprised when they did the fake punt against Kentucky. The Cats melted, and Eli kicked their ass. Last year, Brady Cook was the surprise of the conference. And they put a lot of pros out there. They won a game they shouldn't have against Kansas State. They got another one, but Schrader was a great get from the transfer portal, and they had a great ball club, and they're bringing a ton of guys back. And when you look at the Missouri schedule, I understand why the hype train is there. You got Oklahoma at home. You travel to Texas A&M, but outside of that, I mean, they're most likely going to be 7-0 when they travel to Alabama. This is a very, very obtainable schedule. Alabama's probably going to beat up then. You've got Brady Cook coming back. You've got Luther Burden back, best receiver in college football possibly. Kirby Moore, your offensive coordinator, got quartered by some programs but decided to stay in Como. I get it. I get why the hype train's there. Look, you have Missouri in your potential playoff contenders. And you know what? Even under how I think of them, they could still be college football playoff contenders because I think they could very well go 9-3. I cashed my under bet, and they're still playoff contenders as like the fourth best team in the SEC. Playoff contender, right? They're like in that 12-20 range, fighting for it late, doing the resume stuff. Eli's getting on his podium, pounding at the end of the year. But this notion that they are going to be playing murder ball and in Atlanta for the SEC championship it's insane because there's three big problems here. One, they're just completely returning production. I'm sorry, Bill Connolly's returning production stats don't measure for you're losing your top two corners and Chris Abrams and Ennis Rakestraw. Those guys were awesome, but you're gonna have guys that are better than them right away at both of your two starting cornerback positions. Secondly, you lost a first round edge rusher. You also was the tackle in the first round too, the offensive tackle. You just pooped those out.
Third round, Von Foster.
Okay.
Yeah,
but all SEC guy, right? Like you just pooped those guys out.
Left tackle.
Yeah, like okay, those are big losses. But the biggest one, the biggest of them all. Blake Baker got stolen from you by Brian Kelly. He's down at LSU now. And there's one thing we learned about Eli Drinkowitz. It's kind of similar to Mark Stoops. They're prisoners of their coordinators. And Eli Drinkowitz has made some terrible defensive coordinator hires. Remember the Steve Wilkes experience? How well did that go? And who do they hire? They hire a guy who has, he was the defensive coordinator for Kane Womack. How much was he coordinating the defense? How much was Kane Womack doing that at South Alabama? Right?
Yeah, and he's an older guy too. He's been around a while. This is his, yeah.
Yeah.
He was at Ole Miss for a couple of years, mostly in a support staff role. But yeah.
Exactly. You really trust Eli Drinkowitz to make a defense coordinator hire? Their defense went from 13 in scoring defense to 5th in Baker's second year. Right? It took 2 seasons of that turnaround. They were top 5 in all of the major SEC statistical categories. Oh, yeah, they also lost their signature caller and Tyrone Hooper in the middle of the line. I think people, you see the shiny lures on offense. Schrader was awesome. You lost him, but you still were confident you're going to find a way to run the football. You've got Cook. You've got Burden, Kirby Moore. Blah, blah. That defense was a big part of their success. It's going to take a step back. And the fact that is just a given, that the defense is going to be what it was, I think is incredibly silly. It's laughable. And Missouri fans, they should know better. That's the problem, that frustrates me, is that I'm not an expert on Missouri football history, but I know how many times they've been this close to doing something amazing and then gone and stubbed their toe and mess it up in spectacular fashion. 2007, you blow it in the Big 12 title game. What was it, 5 downs against Nebraska? Like, I mean, Kentucky. Look at the Kentucky series. How many stupid losses do they have to Kentucky for just stupid reasons? Because they're Missouri football. That's what they do. History tells us they aren't destined for good things. Bad things are going to happen to this football program. That's just what happens. So for them to get their hopes up and think that they can do better than 11-2, it's stupid. It is stupid, and they are fooling themselves.
I'm with you probably about 75%, right? Like, Nick, they were 4-0 in one-possession games last year, and that's not even counting the Ohio State game that it was a one-possession game literally for, like, 58 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and then they only had 7 points there until the end. They went 14-3. So, like, they won a lot. I mean, just won a lot of close games. Like, they're not going to go 4-0 in one-possession games again.
Right.
So I think that's a fair way to fade them. I think losing Baker, you bring up a good point. Baker and the star power that they lose on defense. Darius Robinson, first-round pick on the defensive line, and then those two guys in the secondary. And then they also lost a starting safety, Jalen Carleys, who was a late day 3 draft pick as well. So, like, they just lost a lot of talent. But the one thing I will give Missouri is this, like, first off, just want to point this out. Especially in this new SEC, you're a prisoner of your schedule, good or bad. And they open with Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, Vanderbilt. It's 4-0. They go at A&M, at UMass, home against Auburn. Like, they very well could be 6-1, you know, at the halfway point. And so if you're at 6-1, then you really only need 3. If you get to 9-3, you're going to have a really good chance to make the playoff. And that's kind of where I am with them. Like, I look at them. Brady Cook was a 3,000-yard passer who's got wheels that they'll use. Kirby Moore, I think, is a really, at least last year, did a really good job, I think, calling plays. And then Luther Burden is one of the best receivers in college football. And Theo Weiss is a damn good number 2 receiver next to him. And then they had that freshman, number 17, I can't think of his name. He's a good receiver too. So they just got weapons on offense. They're going to score points. You know, the defensive concerns are legitimately valid. But, Nick, they play no one in the non-conference. They're going 4-0 in a yawn here in the non-conference. They have what looks to be 8 conference games. At the end of the year, they go at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, Arkansas. Those could be the 3 worst teams not named. Then they play Vanderbilt. They might play the 4 worst teams in the SEC this year on their schedule. So they just caught a break here, I think. And that's why I think you're going to see them kind of hovering around 9-3. And if you're 9-3, you're in the conversation on Selection Sunday.
No. And I'm with you, Luckett, but that's my whole point. Ooh, rainbow outside. My just whole entire point is that, you know, our guy cousin Shane, he's leading the Missouri hype train. It's going to get really obnoxious. Eli's going to be insufferable when we go down to Dallas for SEC Media Days. But I just don't think from X's and O's, Jimmy and Joe's, they stack up with some of those other teams in the SEC. And I'm just confident that they're going to mess it up. That as easy as that schedule is, and it's the antithesis of the Florida schedule. I think they're going to find a way to stub their toe, mess this thing up, and give us a good reason to laugh at some point this fall. They'll be top 5, and they'll lose a game they shouldn't, and I'm going to have a good chuckle. And all the Missouri fans that are in my mentions, which, boy, there are a lot of them. They're really getting after me. You know, I'm going to have the last laugh. You can poke fun now. I'm going to get that last laugh. Pete, did you end up pulling out some of the tweets at me? Because some of them are pretty funny. I especially enjoyed the meme of Eli Drinkwitz, like with a crooked hat on. I don't know what that was. Twitter. It's a real silly place. Luckett. I don't think we got those. So Luckett, your team has the opposite of the schedule though. Like whereas Missouri gets the cakewalk in the park. The brand, that Oklahoma brand, I don't know if it's I don't think the brand's just going to come in and start curb stomping teams in the SEC just because they got OUs on their helmet.
Yeah, I think you saw Oklahoma have a nice bounce back year 2 under Brent Venables, but a big reason they got the double-digit wins last year were because offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby and quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Lebby's the head coach at Mississippi State. Gabriel's playing quarterback for Oregon this season. So for me, that's concerning. And then I think you even look at what they did in the portal, Nick. Like, they loaded up on offensive and defensive linemen. That's also concerning to me. Like, that you're not in, like, you're so scared that your roster is in that situation that you had to, like, I think in total it had added like 8 or 9 linemen in the portal. And then you look at their defense just has not been up to snuff in the Big 12. It has struggled. And so defensively, you're going to be in trouble. And then that's before you even get to the, and then they have a new offensive coordinator and doing a co-coordinator thing to replace Lebby. So that's a little bit concerning to me. For the first time, Nick, in a long time, Oklahoma doesn't have like a slam dunk, no doubt play caller on offense.
Yeah.
So that's a brand new area that they're going to be in, and then that gets you to the schedule, and this is where it gets tricky. You know, started SEC play week 4. They go Tennessee at Auburn, Texas in Red River, home against South Carolina, at Ole Miss. Then you get a break against Maine. Then you go at Missouri, Bama at home, at LSU. So your last 4 SEC games, Nick, are at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Alabama at home, at LSU. Good freaking luck with that. That win
to the SEC.
that win total's at 7.5. Like, that's going to be an underplay for me. This feels like a 6-6 team. And then if they lose, like, that at Auburn game's huge, but you lose to Texas and like the wheels could almost fall off here. With how that last stretch is those 3 games away from home, and then the one team you get at home on senior day is freaking Bama. So, yeah, I think they're gonna. Everyone thought like Texas would be the one that would get the. They're not ready for the SEC when the moment has come. It looks Texas is way more ready for this, and I think Oklahoma could get rocked or has a chance to get rocked this season.
Yeah, and that is one of those when you talk about the trench play, though, that's going to be the biggest step up, and I think we all forecasted that as soon as they made the move, that the guys you got to get to be able to move bodies around in the SEC are a lot different than the guys you need to against Big 12 defenses. So I'm glad you pointed out the portal stuff, but man, that schedule, it's unforgiving. It's unforgiving, especially without so much unknown there on that offensive side of the ball too. Because there for a while, when in doubt, you could have just been said, "Hey, at least we know Oklahoma's going to score some points. They're going to be able to spread the ball out, throw it around the yard." Nope, not happening. not Dylan Gabriel's out. Who's going to be Oklahoma?
Well, they got Jackson Arnold, who was a freshman, started the Alamo Bowl last year, who I like a lot. Who I liked a lot as a prospect coming out. And if he's good, that might change some things. But like their big offensive ticket this year is like, oh, we got the transfer receiver from Purdue. Like that is their big selling point. Deion Burks is a good player, but it's like,
yeah,
man, this is Oklahoma. Like this shouldn't.
Right.
It shouldn't be like why is it like this? So I would be concerned.
Yeah,
if I was Boomer Sooner.
I would be concerned as well. I'm excited to be able to talk more about the entire league as a whole throughout the summer months. But I hope we don't have to move on from baseball too quick. The Batcats, it was a pretty rough first game of the SEC tournament, but Game 2 was awesome. Game 2 was fun. I enjoy listening to baseball games because it's one of the few things that words can be said while I'm doing work and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. If I miss a sentence or two, I can kind of just perk my ears. I kind of get what's going on. Or if Darren Hedrick gets loud, I know like, oh crap, what's going on here? So I've loved having these games during the day. Do we have an opponent yet for tomorrow? Is that still being determined?
LSU, South Carolina were tied last I saw.
Yeah. So there's a chance that we might get another LSU matchup.
LSU 7, South Carolina 6, middle of the 6th inning. So that'll be decided after we get off here.
Kentucky gets to play the loser of that game. But today was so much fun just hearing the small ball first inning and then you've got the home runs. Hearing Darren call the home run robbery out at center field, where they're just like, back to the warning track. He tracks it. Does he get it? He's got it. I mean, it's so much fun. This team, I'm not the biggest baseball guy. I know you're a little bit more locked into the sport than I am. You're more of a Diamond Dan. But this is the most I've ever paid attention to Kentucky baseball in my life. And I want to keep the good times rolling, man, because they're a lot of fun, even though the bullpen makes me sweat more than I'd like.
Yeah, I would highly advise next week try to get out to the park. Those are fun atmospheres to be in. And then if they make host a super for the first time ever, definitely, if you could get out to that, those are fun. So this SEC tournament, Nick, you just kind of got to enjoy it for what it is. It's not a huge deal if they lose. Like, I don't think Arkansas was all too super sad that they went home today. Kentucky's already kind of got their seed locked up, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun to enjoy it while it's going on for sure. And then they'll get either LSU or South Carolina tomorrow. Both teams will kind of be on their third pitcher in that matchup, so I think that's a good thing for Kentucky potentially. And so
getting those runs early today was huge. Just to all right, you're not going to pitch your ace.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to win it coming out of the losers bracket because you get into Saturday and Sunday. You get a little more stretched thin, especially if you go up against a team on Saturday or Sunday that gets the day off on Friday, that goes win-win, advances to the semis. So you're going to be a little bit more stretched thin.
2 rainbows in the South End. Thunderstorms, shout out.
There you go.
Double rainbow.
But I would enjoy it, and I would say highly advise if you can get out to the park. Those are fun environments, and it's a fun team to watch, Nick, because they score runs. They've got some pop, they got some power, but they move on the bases.
Yeah.
They bunt.
Everybody moves.
They'll lean across the plate and take one for the team, and then their starting pitching is good, and the bullpen is shaky, like you said. But that can lead to some high scoring games. Like today, that was an entertaining game between Arkansas and Kentucky. You saw a bunch of bombs.
We're going to get the right fielder.
Bases. You saw good defense.
We're going to get some more appearances from him, and his name, it's escaping me right now. But they put him in a couple times in a pinch, and it makes me laugh so hard when I hear that an outfielder's coming in to pitch.
James McCoy,
yeah. And hell, he got a save in one of the games, and then got a strikeout before giving up a hit to somebody. Didn't get the save, but Kentucky still won.
That is the worry for tomorrow. They need Mason Moore to go long tomorrow because that's the worry. If they got into the pen, they could be in trouble if they had to go to the pen early.
Hey, well, just score a bunch of runs. All right, make it a high-scoring affair. So I'm excited. I'm loving following it this time of year. Loving the holiday weekend. We have Martels Carter commitment on Saturday. That's expected to be anywhere from 12 to 2. Jacob Polachek had that scoop on KSR Plus. If you aren't a member of KSR Plus, ahead of the summer camp season and busy recruiting month of June, going into July where we're down at SEC Media Days, UK1, they'll get you 2 months. 2 months for only $1. Sign up today. UK1, that's $1 for 2 months of coverage on KSR Plus. Before you get into your roster breakdown, I did want to ask, any Memorial Day weekend plans? You just no lake, no pool, no.
I'll be on Martels Carter watch Saturday.
Okay.
And that's about it. I'll be working on Monday, so have no plans.
Do we the little ones with the pool, like babies by pool sucks. Like that, it's just you can't. They don't like to be in it. They don't.
Baker likes the water. He's old enough to where he can get in a little bit, but Henry is way too young. But
yeah, you gotta. For like infants, it's just the worst. But when they're like 1 or 2, I'm 18 months for all day. Like just jump in and out of that above ground pool, buddy. Wear your ass out. I'll sit over here and drink a beer. I'll go pee in the pool when I need to. I'll go have myself time. So hopefully you have a happy Memorial Day weekend, and everybody celebrates responsibly. The On3 Elite Series is starting, I think, the day after
28th.
Memorial Day. Yeah, so I'm going to be down there for some of it, and I have no idea what to expect. I know.
Oh, you got the invite.
I got the invite. I
Nice.
got the invite. They did not make a graphic for me. But
I'm sorry.
I did get the invite. So the best recruits in the country will be there. The Cavender twins will be there. Will Compton will be there. So I'm fascinated as to what happens. But it's exciting. So, and there's just going to be a bunch of On3 folks down there.
I hope they have the Madden set up again and someone gets you on the sticks and you just get annihilated. That's what I hope happens for you.
It's going to be no. I want to annihilate Pick. Come on, JD. I'll show you what a real program looks like, buddy.
There you go.
Should be a good time though. Should be a good time. You did something that I've thought about doing before, but then once I start doing, I'm like, this is way too much work. So hats off to you. Your breakdown of the entire roster on KSR Plus. Just,
thank you.
That's some work.
It was a lot. Yes, it was.
You get started and it's like, oh, this is fine, and then you realize you're only like a quarter of the way through, and you're like,
I got halfway through running backs, and I was like, this is a lot. This is going to take a while. But yeah, definitely check that out. I think that's a good exercise because there's just players that get lost in the shuffle that you're like, hey, this is where this player is at. So that's really the main goal of that, is to kind of show you where each player is in his development and what kind of the expectations or the projections are for that single player at this point heading into the year.
Yeah, and was there any position in particular that once you really got into the weeds, maybe you felt better or maybe you felt worse about than when you started the exercise?
Defensively, I would say defensively as a whole, like just going position by position, there's not really any weaknesses, I think, that stand out, and I think they're improved at every position from last year, just kind of basing that. Like, I think it's specifically depth. I think at every position they've improved. I think you can go down the line of every position. I think depth's improved across the defense. So that, I think, is like a good something to feel good about going in the year. And then they had I think they have star power too. When you look at Deion Walker, Jamin Dumas-Johnson, Derek Jackson, and Maxwell Hairston, those are four guys, Nick, that I think realistically should probably be on the first team All SEC if not, they should be on second team. Like, they have legit star power on defense. Offensively, they have a big three at receiver, but after that, it's somewhat concerning to me. Like, they've addressed it through the portal and high school recruiting, but they need guys. They need to develop those guys and those guys to hit. And then tailback, I think it's like, if lots riding on Chip Trainum, I would say at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot there,
But on the offensive line, I think the depth is better. Specifically at tackle, I feel fairly good about the tackle depth. And then guard-wise, we'll see with Jagger. There's a lot riding on him, but kind of finding the backups at guard there's some guys there, but you just don't know. We'll see with Dylan Murray and Ben Chrisman.
Yeah.
Right. Kobe Keenum's going to be a guy I'd be interested to hear if we hear anything about him in fall camp, because that would have, if he was ready to take over at center, you could potentially slide Eli Cox to a guard. But I don't know if they're going to do that after the whole experiment last year went very poorly.
I think they're just like, hey, we trust Eli to make the calls. Kobe, be ready next year, buddy.
Yeah, that's what I think is more likely. But
right.
And then tight end, the tight end room's in great shape.
Yeah, and diving into the recruiting aspect of kind of reinforcing that depth as well. Looking at where Kentucky's recruiting, what they're hitting throughout I found it interesting how many talented players are in the state of Virginia in the 2026 class. And I know that's far down the road and all that sort of stuff, but I'm fascinated by that aspect of it because that state feels pretty wide open from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, it's Penn State or Virginia Tech really are the two big main recruiting players there. If you can be the SEC big dog there, then that would be significant. So, Brad White's hitting that hard. Dykill Shorts is hitting the Mid-Atlantic hard. There's one, Harrisburg High School, like it, has 3 top 80 players in the 2026 class. They got
Wow.
a top 35 offensive lineman, a receiver who's he was just a top 300. But then the running back that's committed to Penn State's like a top 50 guy as well. Um, there's a little bit of Florida stuff, a little bit of Georgia stuff. I really like that Eric Wolford's keeping this door open in Michigan. We spoke about it quite a bit towards the end of the season, but the Detroit guys really seem to fit the culture of Kentucky. They all seem to succeed when they get here. And the big piece of this upcoming class in the more immediate future in 2025 is they've got some pretty good skill guys early on, but the offensive tackle, that's the spot that you need to get a really good guy or two, and you also need just kind of a lot of them to rebuild.
Right.
Yeah, right, to rebuild that room.
Yeah, I look at it just in general. Like, I think they're in a good spot for a couple guys. And the June 7th official visit weekend is a big one for the program. That feels like kind of like their all-in weekend. Now, most schools are getting the party started May 31st. Kentucky's not doing that. They did the same last year where they kind of sat out the first weekend and then do a huge weekend that second weekend. And that's what June 7th is. You're going to have what I think are their 2 top tackle prospects right now, targets right now in Darren Stray and in Key Wynn, both from Michigan. Both you're going to have to beat out a Big Ten school, most likely. Michigan State looks like the top competition for Wynn. I think Wisconsin's also involved. Wisconsin looks like the top competition for Stray, and then he's got some other Big Ten schools, and he also got an official visit locked in with Stanford, which is always concerning to me because usually kids that visit Stanford,
they fall for the Stanford stuff. Yeah.
Right. There's a reason they're looking into Stanford. And if they go to Stanford, you can lose them because of what Stanford's just different, right? They can offer something different than anyone else you're competing against. Right. But those are 2 big ones. Stray is a huge one. Like Tucker Caddis mentioned his name when he went on KSR with Matt to commit. Like that was their top target. So those are 2 big ones. And Wynn got a big ranking from On3. He's in the top 250, I believe, in just On3's ranking. So those are, I think, 2 big targets, and they'll be on campus. And Spike Souls is coming that same weekend, the center from Louisville Male. So that's a huge weekend. Like that could be like 75% of their or 80% of their offensive line class, Nick, right there. If you got those 3, and I believe Tucker Caddis is visiting that weekend, if you add those 4 to the fold, then you can get the best available. You got 5-man class, boom, you're done. So that is a big thing I'm going to be watching is that weekend. And then after that, I think they've got some secondary targets or other guys out there. Brian August is a guy who's visiting the week after, feels like a guy they can get from South Florida if they make a push. Taryn Hedrick is another guy from South Florida who locked in a visit this week, but is coming late in June. So does he even make it to that visit? I think is a potential concern. And then other names are going to emerge, and they're probably going to get guys on campus in June to camp and kind of work out. They typically are able to get a handful of those guys a year to kind of really evaluate and potentially become prospects. That's where Quay Sheets-Scott ended up becoming a Kentucky Wildcat, essentially, is because he came and camped last year.
Which that Sunday too is the offensive line, defensive, like that's
it's the same weekend.
Yeah, the lineman
June
camp
9th.
is that Sunday. Which I'm curious how big they're going to make the mega showcase camp is the week prior on the 4th,
June 2nd.
2nd, excuse me. Curious just what camp turnout will be in general, but who knows? Maybe you get a commitment and the guy hangs around and goes to camp, works out with him. We'll see. But it does feel like they have to get at least one of those 2 guys, though, and preferably Bofa. But it does feel like they need to get one of Wynn or Stray. I also shout out to you for trying to pronounce. I had no idea how to say Wynn's first name. Inke.
I mean, I'm probably wrong. I just said what looks right.
Hey,
You know,
you
it
roll
happens
with
it happens every cycle. Like you say a kid's name and then you find out
No,
like
it's
we've been saying
completely
his
wrong.
name wrong for 6
Oh,
months.
the whole time. Yeah, it is what it is. Oh, the worst was Gerard Smith, where we're talking about the Switz. Jacob and Jared Smith.
That's a
No,
perfect example.
It's Gerard. I don't think we found out till after we talked about him flipping and all that.
And then
Like,
some
it was the
kids
day he did.
you don't find out until after they're gone. We've been saying their name the wrong the whole time.
I mean,
like
David
David
Bouvier.
Bouvier.
Yeah, he was Bouvier, and
Yeah.
he got called the wrong. LT called him the wrong name, and it just stuck. So, but shout out, I saw Bouvier somewhere recently. Great guy. Wow. Well, I felt like that was a pretty productive episode for the end of May, going into Memorial Day weekend. A lot of takes, Bacon. Man, the Missouri tweets are just flying in fast and furious. It's hot on the streets
R.I.P. to
right
your
now.
mentions, buddy.
I know. You know what? I might need cousin Shane to come to my defense. The number one Missouri fan on the internet.
See if you can find Drinkowitz's burner because you know it's out there. It's one of them. You just got to sniff it out.
Oh, it won't take me too long. Well, again, I hope you have an enjoyable Memorial Day weekend with the family. I hope everybody watching and listening has a great time with theirs. A big thank you to all of those who served our great nation, who give us a chance to celebrate a little extra day to kick off the summer. Stay safe out there. Go Cats and go Kroger.